unserer vierten Keynote an dem heutigen Tag und das ist nochmal ein spannender Ansatz. Wir hatten heute Morgen ja schon Einblicke in eine Praxis, einen Praxisblick auf die digitale Transformation. Dann hatten wir die Diskussion um die Brand Experience, dass das Thema Erlebnisorientierung nicht stehen bleiben darf bei tollen Interaktionsservices. Wir hatten gehört in der dritten Keynote von Michael Wu, dass es darum geht, ja halt auch irgendwie den Kunden nicht nur zu begeistern, sondern ihn halt auch dann irgendwann zu einem Kontakt, zu einem Enlistment einzuführen. Und an dem Ganzen steht natürlich irgendwie so ein Wandlungsprozess darunter, wo es um neue Technologieansätze geht. Und darüber wollen wir jetzt ein bisschen sprechen. Dafür freue ich mich ganz herzlich, bei uns den Dion Hinchcliffe zu begrüßen. Ich werde jetzt auch ins Englische wechseln. I have to switch in English because though you're nearly every year at CeBIT, you cannot present in German yet.
Not yet, no.
Not yet, but we are practicing on it.
Yeah.
So I introduce you, so as our fourth keynote, you are the Chief Strategy Officer at 7 Summits. You are a yearly guest at CeBIT, also in several topics, but this afternoon we want to talk, or you are going to talk about the shift in the technology landscape, which is also addressing the marketing technology at that point. So is there a major shift?
Yes, well, in the last 10 years, there's been an almost complete shift in how companies can and should market to their customers and to the marketplace as a whole. So that's one of the things we're going to explore. Those technologies also shift how we have to think about customer experience, digital engagement, and that sort of thing as well.
Great. It's your stage, Dion Hinchcliffe.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, so we've heard a lot of great ideas, some interesting trends, some powerful concepts throughout today, and I'm hoping to tie some of those together into a little bit more of the how, as in why is this difficult? Why is digital transformation, which is a top subject in corporate boardrooms around the world, how to become more like a digital native, how to be, we see these internet startups achieving $1 billion in valuation in a very short amount of time, doing it over and over and over. We see that there are easier, better, more sustainable, more scalable ways of creating value with our customers. So how do we get there? So we've seen a wave of new technology become available to us, new possibilities, but we haven't really been very effective at applying them to our organization. So I want to talk a little bit about why that is, and maybe look at why we've been looking through the wrong end of the telescope. This is where the concept of turning the marketing stack upside down is. So I have a privilege of working with a lot of large organizations, primarily work with the Fortune 500 and the Global 2000. I spent a lot of my spare time doing research, trying to understand what the successful organizations are doing, because we can look at some companies. I'll try and tell you stories to highlight my points along the way. Just be aware that for every story I indicate here, that's not an isolated data point. There are dozens more like it. So I write a popular blog on ZDNet. I've written a couple books on this topic, and I write and lecture around the world and build some of these solutions. I'm Chief Strategy Officer for 7 Summits. We've designed over 170 communities for the world's largest brands, because engagement is the currency of marketing today. We've all seen the data. Pushing our content is decreasing in value every single year. It'll work for another 10 years, but the value is going out of it. There are better ways, but it requires new processes, new ways of working, becoming a more digitally native company. So digital is rapidly changing everything that we do. I'll highlight some profound examples that are coming about to hit most organizations in the next few years. And so in my practice, I've been looking at how can we best adapt our connection to that marketplace so that we can survive as organizations, because the data doesn't look good for most of us, right? How can we do this sustainably, right? Because change is getting faster and faster. We'll talk about that. And how can we create value in these new and powerful ways that these digital models allow? So the central problem is this. We now live in exponential times. We have for a while, but the exponential curve is getting higher and higher such that it's difficult for us because the technology industry is so large, so global, and there's so much innovation that our companies aren't getting that much bigger, but the technology world is getting bigger exponentially. How do you adapt to that? Right? Have organizations been successful? There have been a few. Right? It does seem to be possible for organizations that work and operate in different ways. And we're going to talk about what that looks like, because that seems to be the key to unlocking how to create what I call the next generation enterprise, an organization that can naturally renew itself and keep up with the pace of change and be able to adapt to new ways of engaging with and marketing with our customers. So we have the imperative. The data is very, very clear. This is the chart of the average age of organizations, which if you look back at 1960, the average age was 60 years. A company lasted 60 years on average before it was merged or acquired and went out of business. Today, it's much more like 15 years and dropping fairly steadily. Right? It's anticipated to continue dropping. And there has been a lot of research into why. What is it causing? Is it just faster business cycles, faster changing market conditions? Well, yes, but it's a specific change to the operating environment. So the MIT Technology Review, a very respected organization in the IT business, looked at why, sat down with Standard & Poor's and said, what's the primary cause? And it's failure to adapt to changing technology in particular. So this is your business case here, right? In terms of why you have to do something. Doing nothing isn't really an option. And so increasingly, I see this sense of urgency. MIT did a great survey of thousands of executives who had put digital transformation as a priority or are already doing it. And 83% said there's no more time to wait. And we do see this. The companies that have been investing steadily for a while are well ahead, right? Technology is a force multiplier, and it separates the leaders and the laggards. And that's what we see very much with marketing technology, especially when it's aimed at the customer experience beyond the initial marketing phase. That was the stick. Here, we have to do it because the majority of the Fortune 500 since the year 2000 are no longer in business, right? So this is the Borders, the Blockbuster, the Nokias of the world. But we've also seen the upside. So McKinsey does this great survey every year, or most years anyway, about what people have gotten, what benefits they have received from better digital engagement technologies. And this chart tells the subject here. It says that, on average, organizations that have fully digitized see a 25% return to the bottom line. Right? That's very competitively significant. And I see that data in a large number of companies. Frost & Sullivan has statistically verified this by looking at the actual financial returns at companies that have self-evidently a much higher level of digitization than non-performing companies. So digitally enabled organizations get outsized benefits. So here's how some organizations are trying to solve the problem. Right? So how do you solve the exponential change problem? To say, if the outside world changes much faster than me, eventually that becomes unsustainable, it becomes untenable. We won't survive that. That's why that graph on the previous chart looks that way. Well, General Motors tried another approach. They realized that the future of vehicles was going to be having an intimate relationship with your vehicle through mobile devices, right? That you're going to have trip planning software, you're going to have app stores in the dashboard, and you're going to be able to control your car and have it cool down for you before you go out to it. It'll be self-driving soon and have to be connected to do everything, and it will understand your vacation plans, and everything will be done through that mobile device. So they realized that they had to catch up with that shift in the market. The market made a broad shift. They didn't have the skills and infrastructure to create a customer experience that was centered and native and around a mobile interface, so they hired 8,000 mobile programmers in response, right, to attack the scale of the problem. But that seems like a really hard thing to do. And in fact, it's something that most organizations don't have the resources or the capacity to do. Say, I need to create a much better customer experience. So given the scale of the challenge, how many apps, how much infrastructure, how much security we're going to have to build for that, and we don't have skills in that entire technology stack, they try the traditional way. Well, I would argue, and I'm going to try and present a case to you, that the traditional way of staffing into tech change won't work in exponential times. We need to think of a different way. And we heard some great things from Michael Wu earlier saying that, hey, there is amazing assets out there that we can tap into if we can only think about how to make that happen, how to tap into those resources. A poster child of digital transformation in the United States is the department store Nordstrom. They're always at the top of the charts in terms of customer satisfaction, and they have a cutting-edge digital experience. If you go into the Apple App Store, and I suggest you do so, look at the Nordstrom app. It's the only app I've ever seen in the App Store that has 5 stars, not 4.5, not 4 3/4, but an average 5-star rating, and that's not with like 17 reviews. That's with thousands of reviews. They have created an amazing and immersive customer experience that solves the problem with very busy luxury shoppers. They're a luxury brand if you're not familiar with Nordstrom. And so what did they do? This Harvard Business Review said, well, let's study what they did, because this is the model that everyone is going after, is seeking. So the key quote here is, the persistent digitization of Nordstrom business has allowed the company to grow revenues by more than 50% in the last 5 years. Retail is a very, very hard business to grow a single-digit growth rate, much less achieving a 50% growth rate. And they did a couple things right. One, they invested for 5 years before they really expected returns, right? So so we have a lot of infrastructure we have to resolve, we have to build to enable the kinds of digital experiences we want to create. And why a lot of organizations can't get there is that they won't make that 5-year investment. Most of them should have made it when Nordstrom did back in 2004 and said, we need to take our customer information and the knowledge that we have and allow it to work for us wherever it needs to be in customer touch points. We won't have this proprietary view of data that this is my store data or this is my inventory data. We say this is all of our data. We need to get that out there working for us, creating marvelous marketing experiences and amazing customer experiences. And it worked for them. And they did this by saying we have to put this knowledge, this insight, and this value at these customer touch points. So organizations are starting digital transformation with the customer experience. This chart here shows that the majority of them start with improving a customer experience, and later on they do transformation, but they finish with everything, right? So that seems to be the key starting point, because it's obviously the most visible of all the starting points. We'll look at some of the data about is it the most valuable in just a moment. So the possibilities is we have the richest set of marketing technologies available to us than we've ever had before, right? Most of us are still evaluating them, but trying to apply them. We have more data. All of these tools and all these touch points and channels throw off rich knowledge about our customers and the marketplace, about our competitors, and then we have engagement. What are we going to do with that technology that allows us to talk to anyone? I mean, this is the challenge here, is that for the first time in human history, we're now connected to everyone 24 hours a day. What are we going to do with that amazing power? Well, that's what startups, digital natives, that's what they obsess about. What can we do with this amazing connectedness? Whereas traditional organizations go, well, we can connect with our customers a little bit better, or maybe a little bit more often. They don't think about how to reimagine it, and that's the real possibility. But the big picture here is we want to create designed, now that's designed, I'm going to argue it's designed with our customers, that's the co-created part, sustainable multi-channel experiences. And we need to create these in a coherent fashion, despite the fact that we have more and more channels, more and more touch points, devices, apps. Internet of Things is about to hit. Every company needs to figure out how they're going to be connected in their customers' business and their personal lives as well. And create a stream of new products and services that will overwhelm our R&D budgets, almost certainly. So that's the key. How do we get there? So if you look at most breakdowns of digital transformation, there's three major areas. Now I'm going to go right to left. There's the business model. How we do business will change. The good examples are the overused poster children of Uber and Airbnb. They have a very different business model in that they don't have any products themselves that you can actually use. They have partnered with their communities, people who have vehicles or people who have homes, and said, we're going to be a facilitator, an orchestrator. And their entire customer experience is about working people through that community experience, saying, I need a vehicle, and then they introduce somebody in their community that has a vehicle, and that relationship is where the value is. It's that orchestration. So that's an example of how the business models are changing. Operational processes, how we work. You know, things like lean startup, OKRs, DevOps. These are the words that come out of digital startup companies, but I do not see them being used or being actually adopted very effectively in the traditional business world. So that's something we have to take on. And then there's that customer experience itself. And this is where the data is very powerful. It shows that at this intersection of technology and people, facing the marketplace, there's the most value to be had by far. And that's why there is that initial investment, that tremendous interest. If you look at this chart here, customer experience leaders outperform the stock indexes. If you look at the companies that are the best in customer experience, like Nordstrom, you know, like Amazon, and like some of these other technology companies, they significantly outperform the market. And the laggards, the ones that offer the worst customer experience, significantly underperform. So here's, again, the business case saying we need to digitally transform that customer experience, but the challenge is that we have to do this just as customer experience becomes that exponential challenge, right? So every non-trivial object that we have is about to become connected. So all I hear about is connected everything. Nike is going to connect everyone's clothes. It'll tell you, be able to locate them, tell you when they have to be washed, tell you when they have to be repaired, the whole thing. Every object in the workplace and our personal lives is about to become connected, and it's all a race right now to be the first to provide the most complete connected experience with all the data that you need to manage your lives, right? There's hundreds of types of smart devices, but we're about to see another billion devices added, 3 billion active devices by 2020 of more kinds than ever, and wearables are coming too. You know, I've got my Apple Watch right here. Millions of apps. We're going to hit 5 million apps or so. The software business had kind of stopped producing the high level of technology innovation for a good long while. Now, with the smart devices and app stores, we see this explosion of software innovation. So because we live in those exponential times, the marketing stack has become unmanageably complex, I'd argue, right? And by the way, this is a simple version of that map. Björn and I were looking off stage at the real version of that map. I can't remember the gentleman's name. I can't even put it on here. There's so many things. So how do we do that? How do we deal with that complexity and that rate of change? Are some organizations doing it? Well, some are doing it better than others. All right, we'll see a couple more examples here. But we know that we have to deploy this technology where it makes sense, and there's been great studies to show that companies that chase every fad also don't do very well. It's the Digerati, the ones that understand the value of a technology when they see it and say, yes, this has major significant value for us and our customers, we should deploy it, and not chasing everything. But we know we have to connect our customers, our business partners, and our workforce together better. Another great example is Burberry, the fashion brand. They underwent a 1-year digital transformation that resulted in a 21% greater profit by the end of that year. That was led by Angela Ahrens. She now runs Apple stores. But we know that leadership-driven change can drive those effectiveness. And so I'd say the premise is we're seeing these new models based on social media, based on some of these ecosystem models that said that there are radical new ways of providing digital experience. Things that we don't normally talk about. In the internet community, a concept called open APIs is has been all the rage for the last 7 or 8 years. The premise being that you can't possibly create every digital experience that your customers want. However, your business partners can, the people who love your products, the people who see the value in your data and your service, will build on top of that. And we see the same thing with community. Companies can gather their communities of their passionate customers who will do most of the work in things like customer service and marketing and elsewhere. And these aren't isolated case studies. We now see this being done repeatedly. We'll talk about open APIs. There's even ways of making this more predictable. Hackathons are a big deal. We'll touch on those briefly as we go along. But I believe that digital communities are the construct that creates the highest value. We've discovered that self-organization of groups of people has more value than any other way of organizing. We've seen examples in open source. The open source software community consists of literally hundreds of thousands of projects of people, of entirely volunteer labor who've come together and created the software that we've all wanted, right? It's self-organizing. Anyone can participate is the rule. And most software is created that way now. If you look at your Android phone, it's mostly open source software built by communities. So we've seen that model. And it can be applied to marketing. We've seen financial services firms, Dell, the computer company has thousands of Dell advocates that help with social media crises or marketing issues all the time. And there's great case studies of them actually being able to produce high levels of ROI by saying, I can get thousands of our employees and thousands of our advocates to address challenges in the market, messaging issues, and so on. So one of my favorite stories is the story of Foldit, to show that there are new sources of co-creation we couldn't imagine otherwise. Foldit is the URL of the actual platform that ended up being used, but it came from the HIV research community, who had concluded that they were, after the 20 years, they were no closer to solving how the human immune system was being eluded by the AIDS virus. And they said, we've spent billions of dollars, tens of thousands of the smartest people in the world have tried to solve this problem, and we've been unable to. And so they tried a lot of experiments, but the one that works was Foldit, where they took all the data that they had, and they loaded it into this platform that actually did this protein folding. It allowed you to actually fold proteins just like a virus, to see if you could pass the test, to make it invisible from the human immune system. And then they opened it up to a variety of communities that they had, their fellow communities in related science and fields of medicine, to puzzle solvers, to gamers. And what was remarkable is 11 days after they started, they got a definitive solution. And this shows how co-creation can be used in the most arcane, most difficult challenges that you can possibly have. So we see that the great example is Best Buy is the #1 retail store in the United States, and they had this challenge. This was when the Nintendo Wii came out, the very, very popular video game, and the challenge they had was that everybody wanted to buy it, and you'd call up every store, you go to the store's website and see how many of the units were actually in inventory. And someone said, why don't we just build an application that will do that work? Put it on Google Maps, show where those Nintendo Wii's are, and in the 1,000 stores, right? And that way people can go to the store that has the most units. Now, Best Buy should have thought of doing this, but they didn't have the resources, or they didn't have the idea. Of course, the problem was it was just a web page that called the websites of all 1,000 stores as fast as it could in a loop, and it actually brought down all the stores and their website. Lesson being that if you design for loss of control, right, this is a great marketing experience people really wanted. They wanted to where the stores had inventory right now so they could drive there and get that device. That was the customer experience that they wanted. But Best Buy didn't create it. Someone else did, and so they eventually launched what became the Best Buy Developer Network. And we see this same model, creating outsourcing in a very lightweight, dynamic fashion, digital experiences. There's a Sears developer program. The World Bank has a developer program. FedEx as a developer program, realizing I can't possibly create all the digital experiences myself. We live in exponential times. However, I can design my products and services to be able to do that. So that's a huge lesson. Centralized processes can no longer address digital experience alone. And you don't need to. What's amazing is that some of these stories, Citibank had a hackathon. They didn't have enough mobile apps, just like GM. But they knew they weren't going to hire 8,000 programmers, so they opened their APIs. They gathered a bunch of people together in a contest. They did this in South America and said, build the apps and we'll pay a bounty. We have first right of refusal for the best apps. They got 2 hits, 100 submissions, and 2 big successes that have now been released in their products. So what we've learned is to turn the marketing stack on its head, and I'm going to actually go there because I'm running out of time. I always put too much slides in. So what this is leading us to is that we take the common stack of marketing, right? So we have content and conversation. We have all of those, our experience channels we have to manage. And now we have the new field of experience management that says, I'm going to try and orchestrate and control every touch point. And I would argue that we're, again, over-controlling, over-constraining. I think experience management is very important as long as we flip that marketing stack on its head. And so what I would say is we do that. We turn the marketing stack up on its head instead of us pushing control and pushing value out to the marketplace, that we actually find that the majority of the value comes into the marketplace. And it requires us to do 2 things. Experience management has to have platforms for co-creation that actually allow people to do that, and then it has to be designed that way. We need architectures of participation to make sure that we're connected to our single most valuable asset, which is our customers and the greater marketplace. Right? That's the biggest asset we have as an organization, that we actually use that for everything it can be used for. This is what you do when you're connected to everyone in the world. You can deliver value to them, and you can get value from them. And if they're interested in your product and service and your business, they will do that. All the evidence shows that. Everything from open source projects to how successful advocacy marketing has been to, I didn't get a chance to go through it, but there are 12,000 commercial APIs. No one will launch a real digital product without an API so other people can build on top of it. It doesn't happen hardly at all anymore. And that creates these 2 things. An API creates that platform, and then you design it. You encourage people, right? So a hackathon is an example of an architecture of participation, saying, come with us and let's create magic together at a defined point in time, right? And hackathons are very successful. Facebook has used them since 2007 to create new features. They are an absolute market leader, a multi-$100 billion company. Hackathons are instrumental for us, like encouraging rapid platforming and platform growth of their products and services. So the message here, the takeaway for you, is that all organizations can move the digital models faster and more sustainably with a pull model. Instead of trying to do everything yourself, you will fail. You don't have the resources, and the problem is too large. But if you look at what digital native companies do, they say, well, we have enormous resources if we know how to use them and how to tap into them, right? Your customers will market your products. They will support your products. They will build the next digital experience for you, and they will do this in scale. Right, so most APIs have dozens, and many have hundreds and thousands of apps built on top of them. It's a standard distribution curve. And what's amazing is that you don't pay for any of that other than opening it up, giving up a little control. You get all the value back, and that's what the digital leaders do. And that's how digital transformation. If you go down that road, it turns the marketing stack on its head. So. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Do we have time for a few questions, or are we?
Yes. Out? We always have time for a few questions.
Excellent.
So, there's a great paradigm shift. Is that right?
That's right.
So, who's in charge for this? Is it IT? Is it, or are the marketing CMOs already tech savvy enough to manage this transformation?
I think most CMOs that I talk with, I've been talking to a fair amount, saying, who do you think should be in charge of IT? Almost all CMOs are saying, I think I should make the final decision, but I want my partner in IT to support me, and I think most organizations have gone down that route. But who's in charge? I think the customer is mostly in charge, and we can inspire and enable them. So I think that we should be very clear about that.
There are some discussions out there in the blogs, also when we talk about marketing technology, about the marketing technologist. So somebody who's in between the IT and marketing as a new role. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that technologist, though, I'm not sure that word is the right phrase. I think they have to know technology and they have to know marketing. That's what IT doesn't typically have, is the marketing skills. But they're really an orchestrator, a conductor, right? So they're trying to do everything yourself is the mistake that most companies fall into. And by thinking a little bit bigger, that technologist can be that facilitator to create, I think, much better marketing that can be created otherwise.
You got also this layer of different, this image of different layers in the technology evolution. What do you think about the? We talked a lot about data and data analytics already today. So and also on your top layer, there's also this cognitive technology, which is now enhancing the progress of the paradigm shift. How far away is this?
I think it's not far at all. So cognitive analytics have the ability to stare unblinkingly at vast amounts of data and ask the questions you can't ask. You don't even know to ask. And so marketing is a lot about opportunity, saying, I see some customers behaving like this. And if you are the only one asking the questions of the analytics tools, then you'll only get the answers you expect, right? But with cognitive tools, it will ask the questions you don't think to ask. And so I think that's going to raise marketing capabilities, the possibilities up to the next level.
Great. Thank you. Dion Hinchcliffe from 7 Summits.
Thank you.